Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, July 31st, 2008. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week, Mike Dewey, owner and brewer at Mount Carmel Brewery in Cincinnati, Ohio, joins us to share his beers and talk about what it's like to start and run a professional brewery out of his own home. If you're new to home brewing or would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And you can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. I want to put a quick plug for our new shirts. Since they're new on our shop, you can find our Basic Brewing shirt now in black, gray, green, brown, gold, and of course white. The Go Forth and Flocculate shirt is still in just in white. And let me know if you guys have any interest in other colors for that one, and I'll talk to the shirt guy about it. You can find those at our shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Well, speaking of our Flocculate shirt, Shane from Portland writes, I just got back home from the Oregon Brewers Festival where I wore a Go Forth and Flocculate t-shirt. He says, I got a few strange stares, probably from people wondering if flocculate was a dirty word. I ran into several people who knew your show, and a few that didn't, but knew about brewing and were interested. Lots of compliments all around. Well, thanks, Shane. I appreciate your helping to spread the word about the podcast and about homebrewing in general, by the way. You know, that F word, flocculate, that is a conversation starter, I tell you. Before I forget, before I start rambling and forget, don't you forget that Mead Day is this weekend. The American Homebrewers Association is celebrating Mead Day this Saturday, August 2nd. This is your chance to get together with your friends and make meads, sample meads, and spread the word about meads to those who are uninitiated. You can find out more about Mead Day this Saturday, August 2nd, at beertown.org. Well, if you remember last week, we had a letter from Neil, who just moved from San Francisco to Geneva and wanted to know more about home brewing in Switzerland. So I put a call out there to you guys for information, and I got a note from Ray in Zurich. Ray is formerly from Chicago, and he had this to say. Ray says, first of all, as far as I know, it's legal. I've been brewing here for years, and there are many active home brewers and home brewing clubs in Switzerland. That's good to know. Ray goes on to recommend a homebrew shop in Germany for most of his ingredients. Then he goes on to say, the main problem that I've experienced with home brewing in Switzerland is that there is not a variety of supplies that there is in the U.S., not the variety of supplies that there is in the U.S., although the selection of liquid and dry yeasts are reasonably good at the shop that I've recommended. You'll not be able to purchase the full range of Y yeast products like you can in the U.S., and he does not carry any White Labs yeast at all. To supplement my supplies, I've recently started to order from a shop in the U.K. to fill these gaps. I don't order heavy items like grains from the U.K., but I do the occasional order for small things I can't get locally like White Labs yeast, especially the White Labs 001 California ale yeast, so I can make authentic-tasting American pale ales with my backyard-grown Cascade hops. And Ray says, otherwise, relax, don't worry, and welcome to Switzerland. So that's great. Awesome. Cascade hops are growing over there, too. Thanks very much, Ray. I passed the note on to Neil, and he was very appreciative as well. It's wonderful. I'm happy we could make a connection there. And I continue to be amazed at the power of podcasting. Here I am in this little room in Northwest Arkansas and connecting brewers on the other side of the planet. Incredible. Closer to home, Brian from Springfield, Virginia, wrote after hearing last week's show. Brian says, I was very excited to listen to your recent podcast on turbid mashing. I used the very same procedure this last weekend to produce a pseudo-lambic wort. I've got to say that I agree with Chris Colby in that homebrewers should use a thinner mash, especially when using high proportions of unmalted wheat. Brian says, I used 60% barley and 40% unmalted red wheat. I did not do a cereal mash, and my dough-in was literally a dough-in. I kneaded the hot mash as if I were making bread dough. My first turbid extraction in the process took 35 minutes, and I could only get about 3/4 of my anticipated extraction. Brian says, my theory is that the unmalted wheat sucked up all the water, and I probably would have had better luck if I had used a bit of flaked or torrefied wheat. At that thick of a mash, my colander did a better job of pushing the mash around and over it than extracting the actual liquid. And Brian says, my second extraction was very easy. I hit all my temperatures and gravity points, but it is important to remember that your typical infusion calculations won't work. He says it takes much less boiling water to step up your temperatures. I almost made that mistake a few times out of habit. Brian says, all in all, it was a long, hard, but enjoyable process, and I'll probably do it again. However, if I use the same water to grist ratios, I'll try using a French press or something similar to get that first turbid extraction. So very cool. Very cool that someone's doing the turbid mashing. I appreciate your letter, Brian. I'm afraid that I probably would have gotten discouraged if I'd seen my mash look like bread dough in the beginning. I'm afraid that I would have bailed at that point, but I'm glad that you have the stick-to-itiveness to complete the process, Brian. And again, I appreciate the information. One more letter. Jeremy from Duluth, Minnesota writes, I just finished kegging my Independence Day bitter and had a question about getting the krausen scum off the inside of my carboy. I normally use a bucket to do primary, and then I rack to glass after for secondary, but I tried something new this time with one of those better bottles and did a 3-week primary/secondary. What I normally do is just wipe off the krausen scum with my hand when I'm cleaning, but after 20 minutes of trying, I conceded that I wasn't going to be able to get my hand inside the better bottle. He's a little smiley face there. Jeremy says, I currently have it soaking in hot water and OxyClean to loosen it up, but I'm worried about scratching this better bottle. Well, Brian, what I do with my glass carboys is to soak them for a couple, 3 hours with hot water and powdered brewery wash, or PBW. I've also used automatic dishwasher powder, which worked pretty well, but I didn't like dealing with the scent, the fragrance in that. I'm assuming OxyClean would work too, but after I soak, I use a carboy brush to make sure that I get all the stuff out. And, I'm pretty aggressive in brushing the inside of the carboy. But I don't know about a better bottle with the carboy brush. I don't own a better bottle. What about you guys? Do you own better bottles? How do you clean yours out there? Will a carboy brush scratch the inside, or am I just being too cautious? How do you get all the gunk out? Drop me a line and let me know. Write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just use the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And check your email address, too. Okay, we've got a good interview this week, so let's get to it. Whenever we travel nowadays, one of my goals is to get as much stuff on the road as possible while we're in these different locations. And to stop at a local brewery or two is excellent for that. When Steve and I traveled to Cincinnati, before we went, I remembered hearing about the Mount Carmel Brewing Company on the Good Beer Show a while back. Mike Dewey, the owner of the Mount Carmel Brewing Company, started the brewery in his basement, and he's since moved it to its own building behind his house. Now, we've talked to home brewers in the past who have become professional brewers, but we've never talked to professional brewers who are still brewing at home. I don't know how many of those there are out there. Steve Wilkes and I talked to Mike, and we were joined by Jeff Bearer of Craft Beer Radio for the chat. Are you related to the Dewey Decimals system?
I am not. No, the Deweys have been in the Cincinnati area for quite some time. My great-grandfather invented the laundry machine.
The what? The what?
The laundry machine.
You mean like the clothes washer?
Like the industrial laundry machine. Cincinnati Laundry If you go to the Union Terminal, you'll see a picture of his manufacturing facility down there under in the museum area. It's pretty interesting. My family comes from a line of inventors.
That's why you were able to invent this brewery here.
Yeah, out of almost nothing.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming into the conversation. We're here at Mount Carmel Brewery with Mike Dewey.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And we are with Steve Wilkes, who you've heard before.
Yes, hi, James. It's wonderful to be here, and we're going to taste some really good beers, I think.
And we have some very special guests from Craft Beer Radio. We have Jeff Bear.
Hello, James.
And introduce your family.
Hi, this is Heather, who won't say a word on the microphone. And this is Allison, and if you give her enough time, I'm sure she'll talk.
I heard a giggle and a little squeak.
So
that was all me.
Well, we've done the video tour, which is really cool because it's all in this one room, so I didn't have to do much work. So give us, before we, or actually, should we start out on a beer and then go on to the talking part? What should we start out on, Mike?
Well, we should probably start with our amber ale, which is our copper ale.
Okay. And this is straight from the cooler.
This is actually straight from the serving tank, so it was filtered about 48 hours ago.
So tell us about this beer.
This beer started out being a little different character. We started out using Cascade hops, Northern Brewer hops, because of the hop situation. This is one of the beers that we have that has substitution hops. And it's changed a bit. The Cascade, with more of a floral nose to it and distinct finish, has been replaced with the U.S. Challenger, actually, which is more of a green hop, has a bit of mint. It's a little more subtle, I think. But we had to make do. So I think the level of intensity is the same. All of our beers have been pretty well finishers, not real bitter, not huge, not big, but smooth and leaves you coming back for more.
Now this is a very nice beer. What's the ABV on this?
This one comes in about 5.5, 5 1/4.
And it's very nice. I mean, to me, this would be pretty much a session beer. It's comes across fairly fruity, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I think it is fruity, and I'm curious. You said it was in the bright tank, it just was filtered. How long before you would want this served? Because it seems like I'm getting a little bit of green apple, maybe some acetaldehyde in it, which should go away after a little bit of time.
We were discussing that earlier. We, I think, ideally are looking at a 2-month cellaring date for most of our products, but our problem has been just that. Our products are out the door in 2 weeks. We hope to somehow make some changes to our process in order to stabilize the product so it's not so green going out the door. But at this time, that's where it's headed, unfortunately.
I think it's nice. I kind of like the spiciness that I get off of it. And if there's a little green apple, it's kind of, it's got a fruitiness up front that I kind of like, so I don't know if that'll stabilize and move out a little bit, but whatever, it's a nice drinking beer.
Tell us about your brewery. I mean, we are at your home, and we can watch the video tour on a Basic Brewing Video, but we are in a facility that is attached to your home. So you kept saying, well, I'm a home brewer, and I didn't get it. But we are here at your home.
Absolutely. We are in an area that allowed us to commercially manufacture malt beverages in a residence, which is very unique. Since the inception in 2005, we've grown out of that original zoning loophole, if you will, and we've had to make arrangements and change our zoning to accommodate the larger brewery.
How did you start? What you were in construction, and the way the economy's turned, It looks like you've made the right decision
Yeah,
so far.
Very smart. I was in office medical retail development. My wife was in real estate, and in 2005, both were pretty strong, going pretty strong. But starting a family, we need to expand our income, and we kind of flipped a coin and decided that the beer business might offer more possibilities for us, more opportunity. Looking back, we look really smart having gotten out of those fields at the time, but you never know. We took a gamble, and so far it's paid off.
So anytime you guys want to jump in with a question, just feel free.
Well, yeah, before we get too far from where my question originated, you're talking about how the business was owned so you could brew here, and you expanded on. I see one big advantage right away. Most small breweries have to pay rent in some light industrial area to make beer. You presumably own this land, so you don't have that home mortgage and the rent check that you have to pay. So you have a bonus or an advantage over a lot of breweries.
Absolutely. Our growth and success has not only come from marketing and selling product, but keeping our overheads extremely low and not outsourcing much, even with regards to the building itself. I would guess that my company overhead is maybe less than half of what somebody's lease might be to do a startup. So that's been a huge help.
And you hired your second employee besides your wife and yourself yesterday?
Yeah, that'd be Anthony yesterday.
Say hi, Anthony.
How's it going?
He's actually filling growlers in the background.
Yes, we spent too many nights filling growlers trying to keep beer on our trucks. So going into the busy time and increasing our brewing schedule, it was just time for our second employee. The first one was the toughest, though. It was not only tough to pay a big workers' comp bill for one person or something of that nature, but I had a hard time letting go of things, too.
Yeah, you are a hands-on guy. I mean, you built the building, right? And you
Yep. We built it while we were brewing 7 days a week in the basement, and we're still building. As you guys can see, it's still under construction on the exterior, and we hope to finish it this summer and open our doors up to the public so that people can come see us.
Talk about the lines of beers. We've been introduced to your copper ale. What other beers do you have?
We market 4 styles. We have our blonde ale, our amber ale, which is the copper. We have a nut brown ale, which is our newest offering of a year ago, and then a stout. We had 3 styles on the market for about 3 years, and people are always asking us for more, but realistically, we spend so much time and effort just keeping the beer flowing with the 4 styles that that's a big drawback. We don't have the time to explore and visit new styles, which we'd very much like to be able to do.
Now, you were talking before we got started that part of the reason that you brew this family of beers is that they can be brewed with similar ingredients, right?
Yeah, I mean, we start out shoestring budget. I think it's unlikely you'd be able to start a brewery for hundreds of dollars, which, I think at some point you've heard the stories about someone doing that, and it's, the license in advance is over $5,000. The product liability insurance is not hard to find, or is hard to find rather, when you're brewing beer in your basement, and there's some other items. So, you can start it on a cheaper scale, but the key is to have access or availability or a plan for quick growth if it takes off, because manufacturing beer on a small scale is not going to pay the bills. It's volume.
Yeah, it seems like a decision you've got to make, how big you've got to start off it being to pay the bills,
Yep.
but at the same time not overextending yourself so that you have more capacity than you can actually sell.
Yeah, it was just supposed to pay for the hobby initially, but then the potential was there to go after it. The styles of beer that we have are directly related to that, because we wanted to be able to brew any style on any given day depending on how sales went. And to do that, we had to have the same brewer's malt, base malt, in all three at the time styles, and subsequently now all four, in order to be able to do it. I couldn't have an inventory of 3 different brewer's malts in a 200 square foot area in my home.
And I assume American 2-row is the base malt.
Yes, the pale 2-row.
Tell us about the ingredients. What goes into your copper ale? What if we were going to try to brew this at home? How would we go about it?
It's real simple. We still use dextrin as far as to increase head. I don't know whether people are fading away from dextrin these days and trying wheat and other items, but we use the dextrin. We use the 2-row pale. And 10% crystal, and that's it.
Very nice. Allison's chiming in. I think she likes the look of it, at least. Is she a beer fan, Jeff?
Oh, to be honest, she hasn't tried beer yet. I've been trying to get Heather to introduce beer through feeding time, but she won't drink a good stout to help with breast milk or anything.
Well, I've heard that maybe the mother drinking a beer may help with nap time and such, but I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor.
No, but you play one on TV.
Just in my spare time. So should we move on to the nut brown or the stout?
The nut brown. The stout has a bit of roasted malt in it, so it may wreck your palate a bit. For the more mild, nutty flavors you get out of the nut brown. We do use maple in it, so there's a bit of sweetness. I'm not even sure which batch we're drinking here.
You mean pre-hop shortage or post?
Or spot hops. I think we were in spot hops over the winter for this one. I'm not sure. It was dated April.
Now, when you say spot hops,
during the transition between the 2006 harvest and the 2007 harvest being packaged and ready for wholesale, we had to go to spot hops, which actually carried us through about April or so. It carried us a little longer. So we're actually behind on usage right now. We went ahead and wrote out what we had been putting in our beers for a few months. We were using U.S. Goldings in the nut brown. Then we had to go to some other varieties of Goldings, and now we're completely out of it. But the Goldings has a way of, I think, bringing out the sweetness in it versus using the Challenger in it now brings out the nuttiness in it. So we have probably maybe 2 different varieties in house at this point.
How much maple syrup do you use in this? What percentage?
Basically about a 220-gallon batch. We have it depends on the time of year. When maple's running, when you have fresh tapped trees, and we have a lot of maple trees locally as well that will also give varieties of this. You get what's considered a grade A maple, and it's much sweeter. We used approximately a pound in one batch. Now we're up to about 1.5 pounds of grade B, because you get more of the dark amber and less of the sweetness out of the syrup as it ages in the bottle.
So not a tremendous amount. I mean, we're not talking Belgian sugar quantities.
No, Anthony and I were talking about it either yesterday or today with regards to the original 3 styles. We had also used the same yeast. We had one propagator, once again, keeping it efficient, and continuous yeast propagation meant, they're all going to have to derive from the same strand. Now the nut brown is a venture into a new category with the ringwood, and we were discussing it earlier how that can also affect and bring out the sweetness in the palate as well, more so than some other yeast strands.
This is just a nice sweet beer. I think this would be great with dessert. It'd be great with burger. I mean, it's just a nice, easy drinking beer.
Try it. Would you agree this is probably the Goldings?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure I can really speak towards the hops. I'm thinking more of the maple syrup. The fermented has a little bit of a honey type tint to it, but then you get that little bit extra that. What's the word? It's I don't know. I'm drawing a blank, but you get that spice, the maple type spice, like almost like an anise or something like that.
We'll get you out of the serving tank. We'll get you a fresh nut brown with the grade B, the 1.5 pounds versus the 1 pound, and using the Challenger versus the Golding. See if I'm sure you will pick up the two differences.
And as the beer warms up, we get a little more roastiness in there as well, I think.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, James.
No, go ahead.
The malt sweetness really fills out the beginning of the flavor there, too. I'm presuming using some kind of crystal in there to get some of the color, and that's really coming through, and then it fades into that syrup, honey type flavor, and it's a nice transition.
We actually had to increase the crystal by 20 pounds when transitioning from grade A to grade B syrup. Yeah, just to balance out the beer, to keep it more consistent. So a lot of things going on with our hop varieties, and of course as well the different additives that fluctuate.
Actually, I don't want to steal the show, but I do have one thing. When you said it was ringwood yeast, I'm shocked because I'm not a huge fan of ringwood breweries. Just think of like a lot of the Magic Hat beers. Just they don't have their yeast character doesn't do it for me. And when you said this is your ringwood, I was surprised because I didn't detect any of what I have slated as ringwood character.
Okay.
So.
This is a delicious beer. I could drink this all day.
Yeah, me too. I feel like I'm starting to. I couldn't answer your question about the Goldings because it wasn't really side by side with the one in the middle.
Right.
So I don't know. This is just good beer.
This is your way of asking for another one of the other ones.
It is.
And this isn't a beer where the hop character is in the forefront. I mean, this is more about the malt and more about the kind of roasty characters and the kind of sweet and frankly, I've been drinking so many hoppy beers lately that this is it's nice to step over and go to the other side of the equation.
We get that a lot at this area. Cincinnati, Ohio, really has just in the past 24 months begun transitioning into a craft beer market. Maybe not so much local, but through distribution and the availability of beers. It is a growing market here. We've had a couple beer fests and beer tastings, and generally what you find right now still are the IPAs, the pale ales, and when I bring out a stout or a nut brown to a summer event, some people think, oh, I don't know about that, but there aren't enough of them there, and they go over really well. It's nice to have something that's not all about hop.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the hops too, but
absolutely.
There's more to life than just the hops.
With a name like Mount Carmel, you really can't do a hop bomb because people are expecting certain kinds of brown ales and Scottish ales and things like that, I would think.
Yeah, it's we're looking to use. We've got some Galena contracted, so we're looking to do something with that possibly by the end of the summer.
Now, this has got a significant mouthfeel, in my opinion. What
creamy?
Yeah, exactly. What do you do? Is that a function of mash temperature? Is that a function? What is that?
Well, this beer mash is fairly hot. Our fermentation cycles are fast, so we stick to the bigger bodied beers. We get a quicker ferment time out of them. I think it's a combination of the malts and also I'd have to say probably maybe the yeast we're using. It just seems to set itself apart from the other three in its mouthfeel, and characteristically that's the only difference. The others are mashed at a similar temperature and a similar time fashion. So,
Do you see a difference in attenuation rates between your yeast strain? What's the other yeast strain that you use?
The California 001. Sometimes it depends. We typically could run 4 months long before we start new yeast strains. We brew so often that you're talking 2 or 3 days between brews at most, versus 2 weeks. So, in 3 years, I've seen some signs of starving yeast cells, but for the most part, we just try to stay on top of it.
Now that's just a delicious beer.
I wanted to ask you, change the topic just for a second. How did you get started? I mean, I know you were a home brewer, but tell me about the gestation period from, I think I'll brew beer, to now I'm a professional brewer.
Well, I brewed 10 gallons at home. Now I just brewed 220 gallons at home. But, it was there were a few breweries here in Cincinnati that went by the wayside in about 2001. And I had some friends at those breweries who worked at those breweries. And for whatever reason, they closed their doors, and we could no longer get some of the styles that we were used to drinking. And the availability wasn't there either at the time. So we decided we would make them ourselves on a small scale. And that's when we started home brewing in the garage, which we're looking at just across the way there. I would say it didn't take me long to figure out that the part of home brewing I liked best was drinking the beer, and the amount of work and dedication it took to replace that supply of beer that we had from a brewery with all of our own brewed beer was becoming increasingly difficult. And, there just wasn't enough to go around. So that's when my engineering intuition kicked in, and I started looking for, like most home brewers do, they end up with the most simple operation, and they end up building some type of in-house brewery, garage brewery, multi-level brewery. You have to have a mechanical something in you to want to do it. But we made it easier and easier to manufacture the beer, and eventually, we ended up with unlicensed home brewing on a 36,000 watt jacketed steam kettle and a probably about 120 gallon mash. So, besides moving jumpers, there was no work to be done other than turning knobs and turning pumps on and off. So that did it for us. We could do about 3 half barrels at a time, and then we started having fun with it. But yeah. I hand it to the people who still slave over a stove or a hot kettle, because
that's how I brew.
And it takes a certain individual to consistently do that year after year, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, once I get the brew house set up, I mean, what amounts to my brew house. But once it's set up, it's like I brew as much as I can, 3 or 4 batches. I mean, my wife says, "What are you doing? You're going nuts." I said, "Well, it's hard to set this up, and then I got to tear it down."
Running from the garage to the house for a spoon, and it was just grueling. And you can get anything hot, but chilling it, now there's a different story. So with the jacketed kettle, we got pretty smart, and once we were done with the steam, we flushed the jacket with cold water. So we didn't even have to move the work. It stayed in its sanitary little environment, and we just chilled it because we flushed the jacket. And just things like that, making it easier and easier. That's the part of it that hooked me.
Just as an add-on, the steam jacketed thing, you could have saved even more energy by using your pond out back as the cold water.
Absolutely. It had crossed our minds, but man, you guys should have been around when I first fired that thing up in the basement.
Hello, Nellie.
Yeah, we didn't think exhaust at the time, and talk about walking into a brewery. The house was sticky. Yeah, because it boiled, and it really boiled, and so there were some learning curves there. But we did have to rewire the house the kettle's 162 amps. And we had to run a new service from the street because it was 3-phase. We had to convert it to single phase. It was
the street lights are flickering, Oh, that crazy Mike's brewing again.
The neighbors would call. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, was it a decision to go steam-powered even for your current brewery, or was it the equipment that was available to you?
Because I had started with steam, I fell in love with it. Its efficiency, how quick it heated water, how evenly. Of course, there's pros to going direct fire. I mean, the caramelizing, the uniqueness from the brew house itself. I think if you had the same size steam vessel, you could make the same beer in this brew house as you could in another steam vessel. But at the same time, flexibility. If you go to keg cleaning, if you go to steam sterilization for filter pads, if you want to have one power plant and have many uses for it, a boiler is a great way to go. It's a low pressure steam boiler, 15 psi.
Well, let's move on while we've still got a little time. Let's move on to the stout. Or do you need to take a break and talk to him?
I think we just have a visitor.
Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the stout.
Yeah, it's going to be a session beer as well. As I hit on earlier, we knew initially that our product was all going to be sold in growlers, and we didn't want to sell a big, thick oatmeal stout in a 64-ounce, what's sometimes considered a single serve. So we made it more of a session beer, a light American stout. My wife Kathleen, who's not here right now, she had the chocolate malt influence. I like the special roasts, or in a way that I think the beer has a little complexity to it, whereas I get the chocolate in the nose. The mid palate's it's lighter than you would expect in a stout, perhaps. But it's the chocolate, and then it just finishes with that roasted coffee. So it does have some layers to it, even though it's not a big gravity beer.
My wife would love this beer.
So would mine. And this is my favorite of the beers that I've had of yours. I really like this beer a lot.
Yeah. Whenever I find a good low-gravity beer that packs in the flavor, like this one does, the aroma, lots of chocolate, lots of roast, it just makes me happy. Whenever I can find a 4% beer, or whatever, I'm not sure yours weighs in that, but something like that packs in as much flavor as this, it's just like, that's art, because it's easy to make a high-gravity beer with tons of flavor.
Well, all of our styles hover around the same alcohol, 5 to 6%, but another variation that we've been going through is also filtering. The biggest challenge going from a 2-barrel to a 7-barrel for me, because we had marketed product for 18 months on the shelf on a smaller system, we had never filtered. So the growlers over time would pick up sediment. The most difficult transition was not the recipe formulation, it was the filtration. When we started filtering our product, putting back what the filtering process took out was the most challenging. And we went through several different brands of filter pads. In fact, we've just found our favorite as of the last month. So there's been a lot of toying around with different micron levels and brands.
Now, with the decision to filter, were you concerned with how it would impact the flavor on the beer, or do you just see it as a way to get a more shelf-stable product?
I think our market, because our beers are not, they're terrific offerings for crossover transition, domestic manufactured beer versus craft beer, that it was a turnoff for people. Usually it wasn't over obvious, but when we first started selling growlers, the only people who knew what a growler was were the people who drank unfiltered beer on a regular basis. When our market grew, we really had to compete with the larger brands, which offered something that was a filtered product, more polish. It was just a very difficult transition for us. We've gone from, even in the past 6 months, we've figured out how we can go from a 15 micron. Now we're down to the copper and the nut brown you just had are between a 3 and a 7. And we're doing it in less time. So it's just that filtering is not a lot of fun.
So for home brewers out there who want a fairly low gravity but rich and chewy beer like this is, what are the keys?
For me, it's been keeping the ingredients list simple. We mash all of our beers pretty hot. And
so when you say pretty hot, what is that?
Well, anywhere, the 3 or 4 styles range from 155 to 158.
Oh, my goodness, hot.
Yeah. And that gives you a lot of mouthfeel. The fermentation cycles are quick. We pitch it heavy, and, we're looking at fermenting in probably 8 hours. Yeah.
That's gracious.
Holy smoke.
It's probably overkill, but we pitch about 2.5 to 3 gallons per 7-barrel batch, and with the yeast counts we have, it kicks in pretty quick.
Now, from what I've heard out there, if over pitching is nearly as big a sin as under pitching, because the yeast will run through the beer too quickly, and you'll get too clean a beer, and it'll strip all the the good stuff out. You won't get the byproducts of the yeast being a little bit stressed in the proper way. But tasting this beer.
We've done the same thing from day one with that. Even when we were brewing in the basement, 2 barrels at a time, we stuck to the same regimen. So in comparison, volume-wise, we've changed nothing. So I've never tried another way of doing it. Couldn't answer that question for you.
That actually gets me back to talking about your early days as a home brewer. That are these beers typical of the beers that you would have been making when you were just making them for yourself? In other words, will you bring big Belgians or big IPAs or whatever, and then?
No. We always went for volume, and really went at it not knowing a thing about what we were doing. So keeping it simple was our best way of keeping it good.
Yeah.
Making it too advanced wasn't our initial objective. It was just making it.
And what about fermentation temperatures?
In the wintertime, we have our only piece of digital equipment is actually on the fermenters, temp control. And that hasn't always been that way either, but we've upgraded. I have them set at 2-degree differentials, and we range from 68 to 69. Hit 70, it starts knocking down in the wintertime. And in the summertime, because there can be variations in the tank itself, front to back, where the thermal wells are, I drop it down 1 degree to compensate for anything like that, so it doesn't get away from me.
So that's
but lower than most the yeast I use recommend. On the lower side, I think the Californias, they say rate to about 72 degrees, and the Ringwood probably up to about 75. And I've never had any luck with temperatures that high.
So again, they say the higher the fermentation temperature, theoretically, the more fruitiness that you're going to get out of the brew, and the lower the temperature, the cleaner the. So you're pitching a ton of yeast and fermenting, not cold by any means, but in a controlled temperature. But you're still getting nice, full-bodied, satisfying, fruity beers.
Well, we take our time. We get a good efficiency from the malts. the mash we have now, when we Vorloff, we get a nice compacted bed. We spend as much as an hour and a half, sometimes a little longer, running off, and we get really clean wort, which probably has an effect on the fermentation itself because you don't have a lot of proteins and particles making their way all the way to the fermenter. When I first knock the beer out and fill the fermenter, when you take a sample, it looks filtered. It's very clear.
Well, this is... I'm
At a loss for words.
I'm at a loss for words. Anybody else have any words?
Well, the only thing I wanted to ask you is, can you give me the grain bill on this stout?
Let's see. We have the 2-row pale, and uses the California. We have. I'll have to check the percentages. I'm thinking it's around. It's even. I know that the chocolate malts, the roasted malt, and the black patent are all even. Somewhere in the neighborhood of, well, let's see, we've got about 25 pounds apiece in a 220-gallon batch. So whatever size you.
Well, the balance of those flavors is what really strikes me with this stout. That's really compelling about it. That it doesn't taste of black patent malt. It doesn't taste of chocolate malt. It doesn't taste of roasted coffee, except in a linear kind of way that's very nice.
And it's simple.
As
far as the recipe goes, it's very simple. It's 25, 25, 25.
Yeah.
And I've always heard, I've been advised by certain people that black patent, you don't want to use a lot of black patent. But in my espresso porter, I put a pound in for 5 gallons. And that's a pretty fair amount. But but it works.
Well, and I was in a homebrew store, and a fellow was filling his order, and he had one of these recipes that took of course we're talking about 5-gallon batches. He took 0.25 ounces of biscuit malt, and I'm thinking, I don't get it. There
are a couple things very difficult about producing beer for commercial purposes.
Right.
The first one is you end up probably wasting what you used to work all day to make. And wort. But you get over that. And the other thing is, like you just talked about, the efficiency of actually making it. You want to find a recipe that the 25 pounds for me was, okay, I divide these bags in half. So I'm not trying to calculate partial bag orders for the next bill. Once again, simplicity. And the same goes for your hops and the rest of your malts. You'll find a way to make the right amount of beer so that you use 1 bag of something versus a third of a bag or a fraction of a bag, and you just whittle your way through that until you have a nice clean system of doing things.
And that really strikes me that's one of the interesting breakaway points between a hobbyist, a home brewer, and someone who's brewing commercially, that those 14 different malts and 5 different hops and all of that, to a guy that's making 5 gallons of beer, that's okay and that's his hobby. But when you're trying to make a market and make a business, and you've got to still find a very interesting and acceptable, not acceptable, that's not even the right word, a beer that people really want to purchase, because that's your livelihood, and you have to find a way to do that in a practical way. And I just applaud how you've been able to think through that process.
You also have to keep it as consistent as possible, and the simple recipes and simple way of doing things sometimes keeps that consistency valid. I warn people all the time, if you are enjoying the home brewing to a point where you like the clubs, you like the exploration of beer, I very cautiously warn them, if you venture into the commercial side of things, some of that will be stripped from you. And you will not be able to. I drink less beer now owning a brewery than I did before I owned a brewery. So if that doesn't say it right there.
You got to stay clear-headed.
Yeah, well, we try.
But you're in shape, and that's what that's another aspect.
But that's something to think about. Home brewing as an art, as a hobby, is a terrific activity. Just beware what you wish for, because you have to have a good balance of you like the mechanical challenges, because breweries come with mechanical challenges, old or new, doesn't matter, along with the innovative beer making and small business woes on top of it. It's a big combination.
When you're a home brewer, you can say, "Oh, you don't like my beer? It's okay. You don't have to come back."
As a commercial brewer, that really doesn't sound good.
Well, last words, Jeff. Any last words?
No. I enjoy the beers. The low, like I said before, the low alcohol, full flavor combination is a nice. It's a nice vacation from what a lot of craft brewers are doing, I guess, where they're, doing what Stone does, and they're one of the breweries that can say, "You don't like my beer? Well, screw you. We don't care."
Yeah. It's nice to have a little bit of everything.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for your hospitality and all your time.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys coming out and doing a show here at the brewery. It's been excellent. I appreciate the time.
You just need to get distribution down to Northwest Arkansas, that's all.
Well, maybe next week.
Get that growler truck rolling.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again to Mike Dewey for the time and hospitality. He sells a lot of his beer in Kroger stores, I believe, in the Cincinnati area. So be on the lookout for growlers from the Mount Carmel Brewing Company. Excellent stuff. And I'll put a link to the brewery in the description of this episode on basicbrewingradio.com. And thanks again to Steve for all his help out in Cincinnati. Man, it's good to have a partner to come along with me on these things. And also thanks to Jeff and his family for joining us there at the brewery. I hope they all had fun. And be sure to listen to Craft Beer Radio on. You can find it on iTunes or craftbeerradio.com. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can check out our low-tech lagering and decoction mashing DVD on basicbrewingshop.com, where you can see Steve do a single-step decoction mash, and you can follow me through a lager fermentation in the middle of summer, where I don't use a dedicated chest freezer. There are also our original DVDs in Basic Brewing Introduction to Extract Home Brewing. We walk you through the extract brewing process step by step from boiling to bottling. And in Basic Brewing Stepping into All Grain, we take you through the all grain process from milling your grain to collecting your wort. We do like a non-linear navigation thing with the DVD where you can do either infusion mashing or step mashing, or you can choose batch sparging or fly sparging. We got new combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can also see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order it online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Remember, we got colored shirts now, different colors besides white. You can find those at the shop, too. And thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Onkyo TX-SR 705 7.1 channel home theater receiver, black. And refactoring to Patterns, the Addison Wesley Signature Series. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We appreciate your support. Well, that's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson down in Austin. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.